Well, for more on Canada's wildfire season, how it's going and what to expect this summer, we are joined by former BC wildfire firefighter John Davies. He's a registered professional forester and a wildlife management specialist, and we've reached him today in Vernon, BC. Thanks so much for being with us. We're seeing so many intense fires already. It's only May. What do you make of this fire season so far?
Well, I think that it started out fairly intensely, and even though we had expectations with how we were leaving the fire season last year and the lack of precipitation over the winter, that we were in for something like this. The speed and the intensity at what it has started at, I think, has taken even the most seasoned professionals back a bit.
John, does this give you a sense, that speed and that intensity? Does it give you any idea of how this fire season is expected to go?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we've been in a drought for many years now, and we didn't get a lot of precipitation over the winter. We didn't have much in the fall before the snows came, and we certainly haven't had a lot of spring precipitation. So we basically are entering this fire season no better off than we left last year's, and I would expect, unless we get some big changes and some really serious precipitation over the next couple weeks and month, we can expect more of what we saw last year.
I'm wondering, John, it feels like wildfire seasons are starting earlier. They are, as you mentioned, becoming more intense over last year. But is this a year after year? Is this last year to this year? Or have you seen a longer scale of growing intensity?
I would say, yeah, definitely over the longer term, we've seen fire seasons starting earlier, ending later. So, having a longer time frame. Also, drier conditions, these persistent droughts year after year are just making fuel more available.
Mm-hmm.
And so with climate change, trending the way it is, there's no reason, I think, that it wouldn't be unreasonable to expect that this is something that we'll see more often.
Right. So given this trend, has the response to these fires changed? Are we fighting them differently?
Technology has changed. We see different aircraft now. We see upgrading of air tankers. We see more bigger helicopters being utilized than certainly in my days when I was on the ground in the 90s. There's some night flying going on now. There's more structure protection certainly happening in the last decade than was historical. But really, what it comes down to, putting fires out on the ground, it's the men and the women on the end of a hose or a Pulaski, using the fundamentals of fire suppression to put these things out, and that hasn't changed.
Are there any early detection systems? Is it better if firefighters are able to get to them faster, if they sense them earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. Early detection is key. That the faster you can get these fires when they're smaller, the more successful you can be with your initial attack resources. Unfortunately, even with early detection, we're seeing some of these fires ignite and then get up and run and be beyond initial attack capabilities within hours.
So, John, let me ask you, as these seasons become more intense, and I feel like Canadians are going to get used to hearing this year after year, what resources, what do we need? What do firefighters need to help mitigate some of the damage from the fires? What needs to be done differently?
Well, we certainly put a lot of money into response, and we should be ready for a fire season to attack these fires with as much of resources as we can. But really, we need to be putting a lot more time and effort and funding into off-season mitigation and fire prevention. So looking at protecting communities, well before a fire season comes, working with communities on educating them in Fire Smart, which has really taken off, and certainly in BC in the last few years, and helping inform residents on what they can do to harden their homes and make them less prone to ignitions. And then looking at what we can do in and around communities with fuel management. We do some of it, but we don't do it at the scale or the pace that we really need to provide this protection to communities.
Fireproofing for the future, much needed. John, thank you so much for this conversation. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Christine.
John Davies is a registered professional forester and a wildlife management specialist.